"What kind of worthless junk did you give me?" my father said. And then he slapped me in front of 30 guests holding champagne glasses on the night of his 55th birthday in a house I'd scrubbed on my hands and knees since sunrise. I ran out the front door with nothing but a backpack and a bruise on my cheek. I didn't know it then, but that slap was the last thing Victor Hale would ever do to me. Because by midnight, I'd be sitting in a black SUV across from a stranger who would say 5 words that unraveled 18 years of lies. My name is Elena, though for most of my life, I was forced to answer to Amelia. I'm 21. Now let me take you back to that Saturday morning, the day Victor Hale turned 55, and the last day I ever spent under his roof. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. that morning, same as every Saturday. Except this Saturday came with a 2-page handwritten list Sylvia Hale had left on the kitchen counter the night before. Sweep the patio, arrange the folding chairs, 32 of them, one for each guest on Victor's list, press the tablecloth, slice the lemons, wash the Pottery Barn serving platters by hand because the dishwasher leaves spots. Their house sat on a quiet cul-de-sac in Henrico County, Virginia. A 4-bedroom colonial with a manicured lawn Victor hired someone else to mow, but told the neighbors I did. Inside, the dining table was solid oak, seated 12, polished weekly by me. On the counter sat 2 cases of Napa Valley Cabernet and a 3-tier cake from a bakery that charged more for fondant than I earned in a week. My room was downstairs, not the finished basement. The storage closet next to the water heater, no window, and a twin mattress Victor had pulled from a curbside pile when I was 9. A wool blanket that smelled like damp cardboard no matter how many times I washed it. Chloe Hale's room was upstairs. Queen bed, flat screen, vanity mirror ringed with Hollywood bulbs. She was 23 and still lived at home, still had her credit card linked to Victor's account. Still hadn't learned how to boil an egg because that was what I was for. I had spent 3 months saving for Victor's gift. A leather wallet, real leather, from a department store downtown. $84. Which doesn't sound like much unless you're earning $11 an hour scrubbing sheet pans at a restaurant called Rosie's off Route 1. I wrapped it in craft paper because I couldn't afford a gift bag. I didn't know, standing there in that kitchen at 5 in the morning with flour on my hands, that the wallet would be the last thing I ever gave that man. Victor came downstairs at 10. Powder blue Ralph Lauren polo, khakis creased like knife edges, cologne so thick it reached me before he did. He walked the patio like a general inspecting troops, moved 1 balloon cluster 6 inches to the left, stared at the lemon slices I'd arranged on the water pitcher, and said without looking at me, "They're uneven. Do them again." Sylvia appeared at noon, hair blown out, pearl studs, a linen dress from Ann Taylor she'd ordered online, and made me steam. She inspected the kitchen, ran a finger along the countertop, and whispered something to Victor I wasn't supposed to hear, but did. She only got you something cheap. Just brace yourself. Chloe showed up last because of course she did. New dress, new highlights. New heels clicking across the floor I'd waxed at 6 a.m. She handed Victor an Apple Watch, the stainless steel one that retailed for $700. She had charged it to the supplementary credit card Victor gave her for emergencies. Victor opened it, beamed, and kissed her forehead. "This is my girl," he told the first guest walking through the door. "She always knows what her old man likes." He didn't look at me. He never did when other people were watching. I was the girl who carried trays, refilled glasses, wiped condensation rings off the coffee table before they could set. When one of the guests, a woman from Victor's office, asked Sylvia, "Shouldn't Amelia sit down and eat with us?" Sylvia smiled the way she always smiled, warm as a closed door. "Oh, she likes to help. It's her way of showing gratitude. You know how it is with adopted ones." I kept carrying trays. It happened during gift opening. Victor sat at the head of the table like it was a throne. 30 guests arranged around him. Neighbors, church friends, a few co-workers from the insurance agency he managed. Champagne flutes catching the patio string lights. Chloe perched on the armrest of his chair, filming on her phone. Sylvia stood behind him, one hand on his shoulder, radiating the image of a woman who had everything figured out. I came forward with the craft paper package. I had written on the front in my neatest handwriting, "Happy birthday, Victor." Victor took it, weighed it in his hand. I remember thinking maybe he would actually smile. He tore the paper, pulled out the wallet. I flipped it open, flipped it shut, and held it up like evidence at trial. What kind of worthless junk did you give me? His voice cut through the chatter. Conversation stopped. Forks paused midair. Someone set down a glass too carefully. I started to explain. I saved up for 3 months. 3 months. 3 months and this is all you got. He stood. The chair scraped the flagstone. Even the dog gets better treats. And then he hit me, open palm, right across the left side of my face. The sound was sharp and flat, the kind that doesn't echo because it doesn't need to. My head snapped sideways. A champagne flute fell off the table and shattered on the patio floor. And for a second, that was the only sound in the world. No one moved. Sylvia looked down at her plate. A man from Victor's office studied his napkin. Our Chloe bit her lip and kept filming. One person stood. Evelyn Carter, the next-door neighbor, 70 years old and barely 5 feet tall. Victor, that was uncalled for. Stay out of my family business. Evelyn sat back down, but she didn't look away from me. I have never forgotten that. I stood there with the taste of copper on my tongue and a wallet on the ground between us. And I thought, that slap will be the best evidence the lawyers need. I didn't understand that thought yet. I wouldn't understand it for hours. But something inside me had already started counting. I didn't go back to the party. I went to the storage closet, pulled the JanSport backpack off the nail on the wall. Faded navy, zipper fraying. The only thing that had followed me from high school, and packed what I could. 2 shirts, 1 pair of jeans without holes. Plus a toothbrush, a phone charger. The envelope I had found in the bottom of a box Victor threw out last spring. The one with a state logo I didn't understand yet. And from inside a shoebox under my mattress, $340 in cash, mostly 1s and 5s. Tip money from Rosie's that I had hidden because Victor checked my bank account. $340. A backpack. A bruise already blooming purple on my cheekbone. That was everything I owned in this world. I walked through the living room on my way out. The party had resumed. Victor was laughing at something someone said, champagne in hand, the wallet nowhere in sight. Chloe was showing guests something on her phone, probably the video. Sylvia stood at the window and watched me cross the front yard. She reached for the curtain and pulled it shut. And nobody called my name. Outside, the October air hit my face, and the sting on my cheek flared like a second slap. Henrico County at 9 p.m. is dark. Not city dark, where there's always a lit storefront on the next corner, but suburb dark, where the streetlights are spaced far apart and the silence between houses feels deliberate. I walked along Patterson Avenue with no destination, just away. I had made it maybe 2 miles when headlights slowed behind me. A black Cadillac Escalade, clean, tinted windows, Virginia plates. It rolled to a stop 10 feet ahead. The rear door opened and I should have run. Every instinct said, run. But I was already so tired of running from things. I thought maybe, just this once, I'd see what was running toward me. A man stepped out first, mid-50s, tall, lean, wearing a charcoal pea coat I'd later learn was Brooks Brothers. Not flashy, just the kind of coat that fits like someone measured you for it. His hair was dark brown threaded with silver, and his eyes, hazel green, wide-set, catching the streetlight, were the exact same eyes I saw in my bathroom mirror every morning. Behind him stood a woman, shorter, red-haired, sharp-featured, carrying a leather portfolio like she had just left a courtroom. She kept her distance, professional, watchful. The man's hands were trembling. I could see that even in the dark. "I'm sorry to frighten you," he said. His voice cracked on the second word. "My name is Daniel Whitmore, and I believe I am your biological father." I took a step back. My shoulders hit a mailbox post. "That's not possible. My biological parents didn't want me. That's what I was told." "You were told wrong." He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out a photograph. Small, creased at the corners, clearly handled 1,000 times. A woman holding a toddler. The woman had auburn hair and cheekbones like mine and a smile that leaned slightly to the left. The toddler had hazel green eyes. "Her name was Catherine," he said. "She was your mother. She died in a car accident when you were 2, and I have spent every single day since then trying to find you." I looked at the photograph, then at him, then at the photograph again because the woman in it had the same mouth I did, the same tilt of the head, Looking at her felt like finding a word you've been searching for your whole life. The red-haired woman spoke. My name is Margaret Reed. I'm Mr. Whitmore's attorney, specializing in family law. We're not here to take you anywhere you don't want to go. We've been monitoring your situation through legal channels for several months. Tonight, when our investigators saw you leave the house, we made the decision to approach. You were watching the house? Margaret nodded. The birthday party, many guests. It was the safest opportunity to confirm your identity visually. Then we also saw you run. I touched my cheek without thinking. The bruise pulsed under my fingertips. Daniel Whitmore looked at the mark on my face, and something behind his eyes broke very quietly. We sat in the back of the Escalade, Daniel on one side, me on the other, Margaret in the front passenger seat with her portfolio open. The engine was running, the heat on low. It was the warmest I'd been all night. Daniel told me the story like a man who had rehearsed it for 18 years and still wasn't ready. Catherine died on I-64 eastbound on a Tuesday morning in March. A delivery truck crossed the median. She was killed instantly. Daniel had been in the passenger seat. Shattered pelvis, collapsed lung. 4 months in the hospital. I, Elena, had been at home with a neighbor. While I was in the ICU, he said, Kiki Child Protective Services placed you in emergency foster care. Standard procedure when there's no available parent. I understood that. What I didn't understand was why it hadn't ended there. When I got out of the hospital and filed to bring you home, they told me I couldn't. A social worker named Howard Pike handled the case. Pike told family court that I had signed a voluntary relinquishment of parental rights, a legal document surrendering custody permanently. He presented the court with a signed form. The judge approved the adoption. I never signed anything, Daniel said. I was on a ventilator. I couldn't hold a pen, let alone read a legal document. But the court had a piece of paper with his name on it. And that was enough. By the time Daniel hired a lawyer and challenged the ruling, it was too late. Right, the adoption had been finalized. The file was sealed. His daughter had a new name, a new family, a new life somewhere in Virginia he was not allowed to know about. So I hired investigators, he said. Year after year, it doesn't matter what I spent. I would have spent everything. His voice didn't waver when he talked about money. It wavered when he said the word everything. Howard Pike, I said. How much did they pay him? Daniel looked at Margaret. Margaret closed her portfolio. That's what we intend to prove in court. The SUV was still parked on Patterson Avenue, hazard lights blinking amber against the dark. I sat with my backpack on my lap, clutching the straps like a kid on the first day of school, and I told them about the envelope. Last spring, Victor had decided Chloe needed a yoga studio in the house. But that meant clearing the storage closet, my room, and moving my things to an even smaller corner by the furnace. He threw most of my belongings into a garbage bag and tossed it by the curb. I went through the bag before the trash truck came, because that's what you learn to do when nothing you own is safe. You check. You save what you can. At the bottom of a water-damaged cardboard box, underneath old report cards and a Ziploc bag of baby clothes, I found a manila envelope, official-looking. The return address had a seal, and the words, Virginia Department of Social Services, inside. Was a single document, partially redacted, with the heading, Title IV, Adoption Assistance Monthly Disbursement Summary across the top, typed in plain government font, Amelia G. Hale. I didn't know what Title IV was. I didn't know what disbursement summary meant, but I knew my name was on a government document Victor had never shown me, so I folded it up and put it in my backpack. I had been carrying it for 6 months without understanding why. I handed it to Margaret. She unfolded it under the dome light, and I watched her expression change. Not dramatically, just the way a poker player's face changes when the final card flips. This is the adoption subsidy record, she said. The state of Virginia has been paying Victor and Sylvia Hale approximately $810 per month for your care and maintenance for 18 years. She looked at me. That's roughly $175,000. How much of it did you ever see? I thought of the mattress from the curb, the blanket that smelled like cardboard, at the closet with no window. None. Daniel turned his face toward the window, and in the reflection of the glass, I could see him pressing his jaw shut so hard the muscle jumped. All those years, I said, half to myself. He called me a burden, but I wasn't a burden. I was a paycheck. Margaret drove us to a Hilton off Broad Street. Not the Hale house, not a shelter, just somewhere clean and quiet and safe. Daniel checked us in under his name, separate rooms, adjoining door, and the first thing I did was stand in the middle of mine and not know what to do. The bed had white sheets that smelled like detergent instead of mildew. There was a window. I opened the curtains and just looked out at the parking lot. Lights for a long time because looking out a window from my own room was something I hadn't done in years. While I stood there, the memories came in layers. The way water rises, steady and cold. I started cooking family meals when I was 10. Victor said it was to teach me responsibility. By 12, I was doing all the laundry, all the dishes, all the grocery shopping on foot because Victor wouldn't drive me. While Chloe got a Toyota Camry for her 16th birthday. I got a bus pass that expired after 1 month because nobody renewed it, so I walked an hour and a half to Rosie's for my shifts. Victor never let me keep my own documents. No birth certificate, no social security card, no state ID. When I asked for a driver's license at 17, he said, "What for? You don't have anywhere to go." At the time, I thought he was right. Now I understood he had designed it that way. I kept thinking, why did Victor keep me all those years if he despised me? Why not just send me back into the system? If I was so worthless, why hold on? Now I had the answer. $810 a month. That's why. Let me go back 2 weeks before the party, because the truth is, Victor had already shown me who he was. I just didn't have the vocabulary for it yet. And it was a Tuesday evening. Victor called me into his home office, the room no one entered without permission. Mahogany desk, leather wingback chair, hardcover books arranged by color. He was sitting behind the desk like a judge, a manila folder open in front of him. Sit down, not have a seat. Sit down. He pushed a document across the desk. 10, maybe 12 pages. Dense print, a blue signature tab sticking out from the bottom. "This is a voluntary agreement," he said. "It states that you choose to remain under my guardianship because you are not financially or emotionally prepared to live independently. Sign it." I picked it up. Most of the language was impenetrable. But one clause on page 4 I understood perfectly. The agreement authorized Victor to continue managing all state and federal benefits associated with the dependent's care. He wanted me to sign over my own subsidy again, this time voluntarily, with my adult signature, so he could keep collecting even after I aged out of the system. "Why do I need to sign this?" I asked. Victor's expression didn't change. "Because without this family, you're on the street. You don't have a degree, you don't have savings, you don't even have an ID. So you're going to sign this and you're going to sign it before my birthday. Consider it your gift to me." I didn't sign. I asked for more time. Victor said nothing. Just closed the folder and placed it back in the desk drawer slowly, the way you put a loaded gun in a safe. That's why he hit me at the party. It wasn't about the wallet. It was never about the wallet. It was because I had told him no for the first time in 18 years, and he couldn't stand it. Back at the Hilton, at the morning after, I woke up at 5 a.m. out of habit. Heart pounding, already running through the chore list in my head before I remembered. There was no list. There was just a hotel room with white sheets and a window full of gray October sky. A knock came at the adjoining door. Daniel, already dressed, holding 2 cups of coffee from the lobby. He sat one on the desk and took the chair across the room. Not close, not far, just present. Like he was afraid that if he moved too fast, I might disappear again. Margaret arrived at 8 with a garment bag. Inside, a pair of new jeans and a cream-colored cashmere sweater, still tagged. "Something clean to wear," she said. I took them into the bathroom and put them on and looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. Plus, it was the first time in my life I was wearing something that no one else had worn first. When I came out, Daniel's eyes went red at the edges, but he didn't cry. He just nodded and said, "Catherine had that same look," like she was deciding whether to trust the mirror. I sat on the edge of the bed and said what I had been thinking all night. I need proof. Not the photo, not the story. I need a DNA test. If you're who you say you are, the science will back it up. And if you're not, I need to know that too. Daniel didn't flinch. "Of course," Margaret said. "I've already located an AABB-accredited lab in Richmond. We can go today. No hesitation, no offense, no guilt trip. Just of course. I had spent 21 years in a house where asking a question was treated like a personal attack. And here was a man who answered like questions were the most natural thing in the world. I've spent my whole life doing what I was told, I said. If I'm going to trust you, it'll be because I chose to, not because I had nowhere else to go. Daniel set down his coffee. That's exactly how it should be. The lab was a low brick building off Carey Street. Clean, clinical, fluorescent. A technician in scrubs swabbed the inside of my cheek, then Daniel's, labeled the vials, and told us the results would take 3 to 5 business days. 5 days. I had waited 21 years to know who I was. 5 more felt like holding my breath underwater. While we waited, Daniel brought things to the hotel. Not gifts, not the way Victor gave gifts as transactions with strings attached, but pieces. An album of photographs. Catherine pregnant, laughing on a porch swing, one hand on her belly. Catherine holding a newborn with a pink hat. Daniel and Catherine and the baby in front of a brick bungalow in Richmond's fan district with a red door. The baby had hazel green eyes even then. That's the house you came home to, Daniel said. I still own it. I couldn't bring myself to sell it. I studied each photograph like it was a document I needed to memorize for a test. My mother's face, her hands, the way she stood slightly tilted, weight on her left foot, the same way I stood when I wasn't thinking about it. She's beautiful, I said. You look exactly like her, he said. Narrate especially the eyes. On the 5th day, Margaret called. I was sitting on the hotel bed with the album open to a photo of Catherine blowing out birthday candles when my phone rang. 99.998% probability of paternity, Margaret said. It's confirmed. Daniel Whitmore is your biological father. I didn't say anything for a while. I just held the phone and looked at the photograph and felt something crack open in my chest. Not break. Open. The way a door opens when someone finally turns the handle from the other side. 99.998%. A number. But for me, it was the first proof in 21 years that I wasn't an accident nobody wanted. Margaret's voice came back, steady and precise. Now we have enough. The next step is family court. Here's what I learned later. At the morning after the party, Victor called Henrico County Police and reported me missing. Not because he was worried, because he was calculating. The officer who responded ran my information and told Victor what he didn't want to hear. I was 21, a legal adult. If I had left voluntarily, there was no missing person case. She didn't leave voluntarily, Victor told the officer. She's mentally unfit. She can barely function without supervision. The officer asked if he had documentation, a diagnosis, a guardianship order, anything legal. He didn't. Because I wasn't mentally unfit. I was just controlled. That night, according to Sylvia's texts, the ones she would later surrender as evidence, Victor paced the living room for 3 hours while Sylvia sat on the couch and typed what he dictated. Victor, if that girl talks to anyone, CPS. I'm a lawyer, anyone. We're done. Find the adoption file, all of it, the originals. Sylvia, you said she doesn't know anything, Victor. She doesn't, but if someone shows her where to look, he knew, he had always known. The forged signature, the bribed caseworker, the subsidy he had been collecting for 18 years on a child he treated like hired help. Victor carried all of it in his head the way some men carry debt. Constantly aware, constantly managing, never once considering the whole structure might collapse. Victor wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of what I'd find out once I was free. Margaret spread documents across the hotel desk like a surgeon laying out instruments. This, she said, sliding a photocopied form toward me. ACA is the voluntary relinquishment of parental rights dated October 2005. At the bottom was a signature, Daniel A. Whitmore, neat. Deliberate, slightly forward-leaning. Then she placed a second sheet beside it, a certified report from a forensic document examiner, Dr. Emily Marsh, who had compared that signature to 12 known exemplars of Daniel's handwriting from tax returns, mortgage applications, and business contracts spanning 20 years. The pen pressure is inconsistent, Margaret said. The letter formation in the surname doesn't match any of the exemplars. Dr. Marsh's conclusion, she told me, was clear. The signature was produced by a hand other than Daniel A. Whitmore with a high degree of certainty. Then she pulled a third document from the file, a bank record, a personal checking account belonging to Howard Pike, at the social worker who had handled my case. On October 14, 2005, 6 days before the adoption was finalized, a deposit of $5,000 appeared. The source, Victor R. Hale's personal account, not through the church, Margaret said. Not through a charity, direct account to account. I stared at the numbers. $5,000. That was what my entire identity had cost. My name, my father, my childhood, traded for the price of a used car. Daniel sat across the room, arms folded, jaw tight. He had seen those documents before, but watching me see them, that was something different. So the adoption can be undone, I asked. Margaret closed the file. Under Virginia law, an adoption procured through fraud, including forged consent, can be declared void. Yes, it can be undone. 2 days before the court date, a letter arrived at the Hilton front desk addressed to me. Amelia Hale, not Elena Whitmore, not even Elena, because Victor still refused to believe I had ever belonged to anyone else. Inside was a single page on his insurance agency letterhead, handwritten, and a photograph. Me at 3 years old, sitting on Victor's lap in the living room of the house on the cul-de-sac, wearing a pink dress I don't remember owning. He was smiling. I was smiling. It looked like a family. The letter read, Amelia, I don't know who this man is or what he's told you, but he is not your father. He is a stranger exploiting a confused young woman. We are your family. We have been your family for 18 years. Come home. We can work this out. I forgive you for leaving. Dad, I read it 3 times. The word forgive hit me differently each time. First like a door opening, then like a lock clicking shut, then like a hand gripping my wrist. He forgave me for leaving after he hit me. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and felt the room tilt. 18 years of conditioning doesn't switch off, because a DNA test says 99.998%. Somewhere inside me, a voice I had carried since childhood whispered, what if Victor is right? What if this is all a trick? What if Daniel wants something from you too? I looked at Daniel, who was reading in the chair by the window, and asked, how do I know you're not the same as him? He put the book down. He didn't look hurt. He looked like a man who understood exactly why I was asking. You don't, he said. Not yet, and I'm not going to try to convince you with words, because words are cheap. The DNA doesn't lie. The documents don't lie. The court will decide what's true. All I'm asking is that you let the evidence speak. Then he picked up his book again, and somehow that frightened me more than pressure would have, because it was so different from everything I knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. So I looked at the evidence. I put the Title IV envelope from my backpack on the desk beside Victor's letter. 2 documents, one from the state confirming that Victor received $810 a month to take care of me. One from Victor claiming he was my family. If Victor loved me, why did I sleep in a storage closet? If Victor loved me, why didn't I have a birth certificate, a social security card, a single piece of identification with my name on it? If Victor loved me, why was the guardianship extension he tried to make me sign designed to keep the subsidy flowing? Not to keep me safe? The answer was in the math. It had always been in the math. Victor didn't love me. Victor invoiced me. At 11 p.m., I called Margaret. She picked up on the second ring. I'm going to court, I said. Not because I trust Daniel fully. Not yet, but because I deserve to know the truth. That's all we need, she said. The next afternoon, Derek Lawson came to the hotel, mid-40s, square-jawed, serious, a social worker with the Virginia Department of Social Services assigned to review Daniel's petition. He asked me about my living conditions growing up. I told him about the closet, the chores, the missing documents, the isolation. He wrote everything down in a small notebook, and when I finished, he didn't say I'm sorry. He said, what you're describing, if corroborated by the records, constitutes neglect, and the financial component constitutes exploitation of adoption assistance funds. Then more quietly, this isn't just about your adoption being fraudulent, Miss Whitmore. This is about a system that was supposed to protect you and didn't. I told myself, I'm not choosing Daniel over Victor. I'm choosing the truth over the lie I've been living. The night before the hearing, Victor sat at the same oak dining table I had polished every week for 18 years and rehearsed with his lawyer. Not Margaret's caliber of lawyer, a general practitioner from a strip mall office who charged by the half hour and had never handled an adoption fraud case in his life. I have all the paperwork, Victor said. Signed, sealed, stamped by the court. I've been a member of First Baptist for 22 years. I coach Little League. Everyone in this community knows who I am, Sylvia asked. What about the subsidy envelope? What if they ask about the money? Victor didn't look up. Nobody audits that. We're fine. Chloe wandered through and asked, almost bored, if Amelia doesn't come back, can I turn her room into a walk-in closet? Victor didn't answer. He was already drafting his opening statement in his head, the one where he would explain what a generous, God-fearing man he was for taking in a child nobody else wanted. He didn't know the judge would be looking at a 3-inch file full of forged signatures, bribery records, and a forensic report. He didn't know the girl he had raised to be silent had finally found her voice. The morning of the hearing, Margaret turned the Hilton conference room into a war room. She laid out 5 stacks of documents, each flagged with colored tabs. I sat at one end with a cup of coffee going cold in my hands while she walked us through them. Stack 1, DNA results. A ABB accredited lab. Chain of custody documented, 99.998% probability. Stack 2, forensic handwriting analysis from Dr. Emily Marsh. And the signature on the relinquishment form is not Daniel's. Stack 3, financial records obtained through our petition to the Virginia Department of Social Services. Victor and Sylvia Hale received $810 per month in Title IV e-adoption assistance for approximately 216 months. Total, $174,960. Stack 4, Derek Lawson's full report. Child neglect findings. No medical records after age 14. No identification documents in your possession. Living conditions inconsistent with the purpose of adoption assistance. Stack 5. A sworn declaration from Evelyn Carter, your former neighbor, as she will testify to ongoing unequal treatment, and that she personally observed Victor strike you at the birthday party. Do I have to say anything in court? I asked. Margaret looked at me. Only if you want to. The paperwork speaks for itself. Daniel, who had said almost nothing during the whole briefing, finally spoke. Whatever happens in there, you already won. You're free. I looked at the stacks on the table, a lifetime of lies dismantled into tabbed folders, and I thought, no, I haven't won yet, but I'm about to. Daniel took me to Banana Republic that afternoon, not because the clothes mattered, but because he said, you should walk into that room looking exactly like who you are, someone who deserves to be heard. I tried on a navy blazer, a white silk blouse, charcoal slacks, and I stood in front of the fitting room mirror and stared at the person looking back. She had straight shoulders and clear eyes. She looked like someone who might sit at a conference table, not carry trays to one. Your mother used to do that, Daniel said. He was leaning against the wall outside the fitting rooms, hands in his coat pockets. Stand in front of the mirror for a long time, then smile at herself, just a little, like she'd settled something. I hadn't smiled, but I understood what he meant. That night, the night before the hearing, I sat on the hotel bed and wrote in a notebook I had bought at CVS across the street. Not a speech, not a plan, just one line. No matter what happens tomorrow, I will never go back to that storage room. I will never answer to a name that isn't mine. I will never again be grateful for being used. I slept 4 hours. I dreamed of a red front door opening, Richmond Family Court, a Tuesday morning in late October, old federal brick building, columned entrance, hallway floors that echoed every footstep. I arrived at 8:30 with Daniel on my left and Margaret on my right, Derek Lawson a few steps behind carrying a banker's box of records, navy blazer, white blouse, hair pulled back in a low knot, no jewelry. My hands were steady and my back was straight. Victor arrived at 8:40, gray suit, burgundy tie, Sylvia on his arm in her Ann Taylor dress, Chloe trailing behind in something too casual for court. His lawyer carried a single file folder. Victor carried his chin at the angle of a man who believed this was a formality. Then he saw us. His eyes went to me first, registered the blazer, the posture, the absence of the girl who used to stare at the floor, then to Daniel, then Margaret, and then the banker's box Derek was setting on the table. Victor's face didn't crumble. It recalibrated. The clerk opened the courtroom doors and called the case. In the matter of the adoption of the minor formerly known as Elena Whitmore, now styled Amelia Grace Hale, we walked in, Same door, different worlds. Margaret stood first. Your Honor, we are here today to present evidence that the adoption of Elena Whitmore, known for the past 18 years as Amelia Grace Hale, was obtained through fraud, specifically the forging of a biological parent's consent to relinquish parental rights, facilitated by a financial payment to the case-assigned social worker. She presented the DNA results first, then the forensic handwriting analysis, then the financial records. Victor's lawyer stood to object and called it an attempt to relitigate a settled matter. Margaret didn't turn around. A decree built on a forged signature is not settled. It is concealed. We are here to unconceal it. Judge Patricia Warren let her continue. Then came the financial records. Margaret projected the Title IV disbursement summary onto the courtroom screen. The same document I had rescued from a garbage bag. Month by month, year by year, a ledger of my childhood. Mr. Hale, Margaret said, the state of Virginia paid your household $810 per month in adoption assistance for the care of the child placed with you. That totals $174,960. Can you tell the court how those funds were allocated toward the child's welfare? Victor straightened in his chair. Everything went to the girl. We fed her, clothed her, kept a roof over her head. 18 years of that isn't cheap. Margaret nodded like she had expected exactly that answer. Then she called Derek Lawson. He took the stand and read from his report. The child's living space was a converted storage area adjacent to the home's water heater, approximately 60 square feet. No exterior window, no closet. The mattress showed visible wear and water damage consistent with curbside salvage. I found no medical records for the child after age 14, no dental records, no immunizations after 8th grade. The child had no state-issued identification, no social security card in her possession, and no documented access to her own adoption file. He looked at the judge. In my professional assessment, Your Honor, on the living conditions described and observed are consistent with child neglect, not with the intended purpose of adoption assistance funds. Sylvia started crying, softly at first, then louder, the performed kind of crying that draws eyes. Victor squeezed her hand and sat harder into his role. Then Evelyn Carter took the stand. Navy cardigan, sensible flats, no performance. I've lived next to that family for 12 years, she said. I watched that girl mow their lawn, wash their cars, hang laundry in the backyard while the other daughter sunbathed. I never once saw Amelia, Elena, sit at their dinner table when guests were present. And on the night of Mr. Hale's birthday, I watched him strike her across the face in front of 30 people because she gave him a gift he thought was beneath him. The courtroom went quiet, and then Margaret turned back to Victor. Mr. Hale, do you know a man named Howard Pike? Victor didn't blink. No. Margaret held up a photograph dated June 2004. Victor standing beside a thin man wearing a Virginia DSS lanyard. This was taken at the First Baptist Church community picnic. The man beside you is Howard Pike, the social worker assigned to Elena Whitmore's case. Do you still maintain you don't know him? Victor's jaw worked. I may have met him in passing. You remember well enough to send him $5,000. Margaret projected the bank statement, Victor's personal checking account. October 14, 2005. Wire transfer. Recipient. Howard M. Pike. Can you explain this payment? That was a donation for the church's. It was routed from your personal account directly to Mr. Pike's personal account. Or not the church's account. Victor turned to his lawyer. His lawyer stared at the table. No objection came. And then Victor snapped. I gave that girl everything. He stood, one hand flat on the table. 18 years, a home, food, and this is the thanks I get. Some con man shows up and suddenly I'm the villain. Mr. Hale, Judge Warren said, low and final. Sit down now. He sat, but the room had heard it. The mask cracking, the entitlement spilling through. Margaret turned to the judge. Your Honor, we ask the court to note Mr. Hale's characterization of his parental role as something he gave and expects repayment for. That is not parenting. That is a transaction. Then she looked at me. I had told her the night before, I want to speak. Not because the case needed it, because I needed it. Your Honor, Margaret said, the petitioner's daughter would like to address the court if permitted. Judge Warren nodded. You may proceed. I stood. Navy blazer, white blouse, hands at my sides. I looked at the judge, not Victor. Your Honor, I'm not here for revenge. The words sat in the air. I'm here because for 21 years, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my own name. I didn't know my mother's face. I didn't know that someone was looking for me. I didn't know that the papers that put me in that house were built on a forged signature. I paused and breathed. Mr. Hale says he gave me everything. Here is what everything looked like. A storage closet with no window, a mattress from someone's curb, no doctor visits after age 14, no identification, no birth certificate. I didn't know my own social security number until 2 weeks ago. And I worked in that house from the time I was 8 years old, cooking, cleaning, laundry, and every day I was told I should be grateful for it. That without them, I was nothing. My voice didn't break. He slapped me at his birthday party because I gave him a wallet I had saved 3 months to buy. But the truth is, he slapped me because I would not sign a paper giving him continued control over my life. That's what I was to him, not a daughter, a line item. I looked at the judge. I'm not asking this court to punish Victor Hale. I'm asking this court to tell the truth. Because I deserve at least that. Every child in the system deserves that. I sat down, and then the thing no one expected happened. Sylvia stood, not from the witness stand, from the respondent's bench. Your Honor, I have something I need to say. Victor grabbed her wrist. Sylvia, sit down. She pulled free. For the first time in my life, I saw her pull free of anything. I wrote the check, Sylvia said. $5,000 to Howard Pike. Victor told me it was to expedite the adoption process. I wrote it from our joint account. And I knew what it meant. Victor went red from the collar up. She's lying. She's confused. I am trying to protect myself, Sylvia said, voice breaking high and raw. Because I've been protecting you for 18 years, and I can't do it anymore. I watched you hit that girl. I watched you work her like a mule. And I didn't say anything because I was afraid of you. Judge Warren let the silence sit. Then she took 12 minutes to review the final documents. I know because I watched the analog clock on the wall and counted every second. When she looked up, and she addressed me first, Ms. Whitmore, and I will use that name now because the evidence before this court compels it. The evidence is unambiguous, Judge Patricia Warren said. The voluntary relinquishment of parental rights filed in October 2005 bears a signature that has been determined by certified forensic analysis to be fraudulent. The biological father, Daniel Whitmore, never consented to the termination of his parental rights. The adoption that followed was therefore built on a foundation of forgery and based on the financial evidence presented, facilitated by a direct payment to the case-assigned social worker. She turned to Victor. He was sitting rigidly upright, tie still knotted, hands flat on the table, a man holding the posture of authority while the authority drained out of him. It is the ruling of this court that the adoption of Elena Whitmore, styled as Amelia Grace Hale, is declared void ab initio. The adoption is annulled in its entirety. Victor didn't move. Furthermore, the court orders Victor and Sylvia Hale to make full restitution of all Title IV adoption assistance funds received, totaling $174,960 to the Commonwealth of Virginia. Sylvia made a sound that wasn't quite a word. Finally, this court is referring the matter to the Henrico County District Attorney's Office for investigation of potential criminal charges, including but not limited to forgery, fraud in connection with public assistance, and child neglect. The judge set down her papers. The child's legal name is restored to Elena Whitmore. Effective immediately, court is adjourned. The gavel came down, and the sound of it, that single wooden knock, was the loudest thing I had ever heard in my life. Louder than the slap, louder than 18 years of silence, it sounded like a lock opening. Outside the courtroom, Chloe ran after me. I didn't know, she said, makeup ruined, breathing hard. About the money, the subsidy. I thought Mom and Dad were paying for my school out of his salary. I didn't know it was... She couldn't finish, because the sentence ended with your money. I looked at her. The girl who got the Apple Watch, the Toyota Camry, the Queen bed. The credit card that never declined. The girl who filmed while I got hit. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to walk away. But what I felt wasn't rage. It was clarity. I hope you figure out who you are without his money, Chloe. I really do, but that's your journey, not mine. She nodded once, and I walked away. Victor was standing at the bottom of the courthouse steps. Our suit jacket unbuttoned, tie loosened, not smaller physically, just diminished. I was halfway down the steps when he said it. "Amelia," I stopped and turned. He looked at me the way he always had, like I was something he owned and couldn't quite figure out the value of. "After everything I did for you," he said, "after 18 years under my roof, this is how you repay me?" And in that moment, I understood him completely, even now, even after the ruling, even after the evidence. Victor Hale still believed he was owed something. "My name is Elena," I said, "and you didn't do anything for me. You did everything to me, and now it's over." I turned and walked down the rest of the steps. Daniel was waiting by the SUV with the door open. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. And he just held the door the way you hold a door for someone you've been waiting 18 years to hold a door for. I got in. The door closed. And the last thing I saw through the tinted window was Victor Hale standing alone on the courthouse steps, watching his investment drive away. 6 months later, here's where I am now. I live in Richmond, not in the fan district house with the red door, though Daniel offered it. I have a studio apartment off Gray Street with tall windows that let in so much morning light, I still pause sometimes just to look at it. The windows were the first thing I checked when I went apartment hunting. I spent 18 years in a room without one. Now I need to see the sky when I wake up. I'm studying for my GED. I'm also enrolled in the culinary program at Reynolds Community College, which is ironic, I know. And Victor made me cook every meal for 18 years, and now I'm choosing it. But that's the difference, isn't it? Between something done to you and something you decide to do. Daniel and I have dinner every Sunday at the bungalow. He's not a great cook. His specialty is overcooked salmon and slightly burned garlic bread, but he makes it himself. He sets the table for two. He asks me about my week, and he listens to the answer. We're not perfect. There are awkward silences. You can't recover 18 stolen years over salmon, but he shows up every Sunday without fail. As for the Hales, Victor and Sylvia are awaiting trial. Forgery, fraud, child neglect. The house in Henrico County is under a second mortgage to cover restitution. Victor was asked to resign from First Baptist Board of Deacons. He did not go quietly. Sylvia, who cooperated with the investigation, may receive a reduced charge. Chloe moved in with an aunt in Fredericksburg and got a retail job, the first job she has ever had. I go to therapy every Thursday with Dr. Ramirez, who has a small office with a ficus plant and doesn't tell me how to feel. She just asks questions and lets me find my own answers. After 21 years of being told what to think, that feels like learning a new language. Healing doesn't happen overnight. Some mornings I still wake up at 5 a.m. with my heart racing, already mentally cataloging chores that no longer exist. But then I open the curtains, and there's the sky, and I remember where I am. I want to be clear about something. This story isn't about revenge. It may look that way. The courtroom, the ruling, the restitution order, the criminal charges, but revenge would mean I wanted Victor to suffer the way I suffered. I don't. I want him held accountable. Those are different things. Revenge is a fire you light, hoping it burns someone else. Accountability is just turning on the lights so everyone can see what was already there. If you're in a family where you're tolerated instead of loved, where your presence is endured rather than valued, where you've been taught that gratitude means silence and obedience means survival, hear this. You are not the problem. You were never the problem. The people who made you feel like a burden were carrying their own debts, and they put the weight on you because you were small enough to accept it. You deserve to know your own name. Family is not paperwork. It isn't a court decree or an adoption file or a forged signature. A family is the person who sits with you while you learn to trust again. The person who says, of course, when you ask for proof instead of faith. The person who holds the door and doesn't ask you to be grateful for it. Last Sunday, Daniel and I sat on the porch of the bungalow with the red door. He was drinking coffee. I was reading. Neither of us was talking, and it was the most comfortable silence I've ever known. At one point, he looked over and said, "I'm glad you're here," and I said, "Me too. My name is Elena Whitmore, and for the first time in my life, I know exactly who I am."